Hey guys, welcome in. Very excited right now to have our next guest. Somebody I've been looking forward to talk to. Somebody you guys know by proxy. He is one of the co-founders of Wagertalk, Wagertalk.com, and he is what makes everything tick there outside of the Prez. Because thank goodness I've only had the Prez so far, but now I get the real man behind the man, Marco D'Angelo. He joins us via the Miami Acura hotline. And Marco, thank you for not being the Prez first and foremost. But welcome in, man. It's a pleasure having the chance to finally talk to you.
I've been looking forward to it, Joe, and just a big thank you to everything that you've done with our guys. And I know you've had just about everybody on here, all the key guys, and we appreciate that. And we got to get you out here to Vegas, my man. We're going to show you a good time out here.
I'm coming, man. Bail money it is. I can't wait to hang out and have a few drinks with all of you. That is for sure. Now, for those listeners here, Marco, that they know Wagertalk, but they may not know Marco. You've had actually an exceptional year here across the board, football, basketball. Give the viewers, give the listeners here a little background of what the year has been like for you.
Well, I'll tell you, my bread and butter has always been baseball, and that's, the least popular sport with bettors. We've just had an incredible run with baseball over the years, but this year, the basketball right now, Joe, we're just absolutely killing it. I love college basketball. College basketball, conference play is my bread and butter. I love when we're in the conference season, and right now we're on an 18-6 run with our college basketball plays. We're on an overall run last 48 days of 55-35, picking up 61 units for our clients. So it's been a good run. I'm reaching for knocking on wood right now because handicappers are very superstitious, and it's been good. But we've got a special event coming up this weekend, and that's part of my other passion. People that a lot of people know it because I tweet about it all the time, and then during the Triple Crown, we're always doing big features with the horses. But my other business/hobby, my accountant reminds me you have to actually show a profit once every 7 years to call it a business, but I am in horse racing as well, and it's been in my blood. I bought my first horse in 1986, wow. And I've had horses ever since.
Wow. Yeah, once you're in it, once a horse guy, always a horse guy. I have found that to be true across the board. And does Wagertalk, do you guys dabble at all in any, have you gone down that route as far as cappers go? Because probably nobody better than you on that roster, but have you dabbled at all in it?
We have some guys. There's a guy at the site, SIG, SIG. He's done a lot of stuff. He's done free stuff for people and have posted his stuff at our site. I will sell picks during the Triple Crown, and I'm actually I'm going to be giving you guys some picks here today. But when there's a big race, I will, give my opinions on it. But the Triple Crown is my bread and butter to do that. I dig deep into it because it's the slower time of the year. Like football season, everybody loves the Breeders' Crown and the Breeders' Cup, I should say. And it's a situation where that's in the heart of football. I got too many things going on to really focus on horse racing then. So doing it over the summer months, with the first Saturday in May until we hit the Belmont in first Saturday in June, that's a slower time of the year, and I can really put the focus in there. And I love every summertime. If you've never done it, Joe, it's horse players. If you love horses, it's got to be a bucket list for you. You got to do it, and that is to go to Del Mar on opening day for their summer meet.
Yes.
Absolutely insane. First time I went, I'm texting my buddies back that there was so much eye candy at the track. I mean, when you think of people who have this image of horse racing as an old man's sport, it is not at Del Mar. Trust me. Yep. And if you want to see some very fine fillies, both four-legged and two-legged, go to Del Mar on opening day. I walked into Del Mar normal, with all the eye candy, I walked out a diabetic.
Yeah, amen to that. I was actually there for the closing of the season some years back there, but right over the water there, it's just a magnificent place. And you're right, there's so much more going on there than just the horse racing. It is very hard to kind of study and try to dope out horses while you've got an awful lot of fillies, like you said, walking by you. It is gorgeous, and by the same token, anybody talk about bucket list, ever get to Saratoga for that 7-week stretch in the summer is also you want to talk about rich in history and absolutely beautiful up in upstate New York there. They certainly had to do it in Saratoga. Gorgeous as well.
That's on my bucket list. I haven't done Saratoga, and honestly, I haven't done Gulfstream either. Those are the two that are left on my bucket list. Keeneland was always my favorite racetrack until I saw Del Mar.
Yeah.
Once I went to Del Mar, that became my favorite track. But Keeneland is still there. If you ever get to Lexington, make sure you check out Keeneland. But Saratoga and Gulfstream are the two that are left on my bucket list.
Well, we got you here. Don't worry about it, man. Mi casa, su casa when you want to come down. He is Marco D'Angelo, Wagertalk.com. And outside of the Kentucky Derby, outside of the Preakness, the Belmont States, those three big ones, there is the Pegasus World Cup. It's one of the most wagered upon horse races of the year outside of those three. An awful lot of money. It is here in my backyard in Gulfstream Park. And before we talk a little bit about some of these horses, you are in Vegas, Marco, and a lot of questions have been swirling around the big game next week in Atlanta. And there's an awful lot of money sitting on the sidelines right now thinking this is going to get to -3 for the Rams, as Joe Public is just gobbling up here Tom Brady and Bill Belichick 48 here. A lot of public money coming in, but not a lot of sharp money yet, at least not now. But it's only been to -3 in one book in Vegas, and it lasted just about 18 minutes. Kind of help the listeners and the viewers understand what happened during those 17 minutes that we got to -3 and then we haven't seen it since.
Well, immediately when he got to 3, all of the sharps that you are talking about that bet numbers, they ran. I mean, they were trying to get there as quick as they could to grab that 3. And that SportsBook was the South Point, and they have a sister property, Rampart Casino. But South Point is a pioneer. They're one of the last man standing as far as old school bookmaking, where they put their own numbers up. And they do things a little bit differently. Golden Nugget Downtown is a standalone as well, but most books, whenever they start to get a lot of action on the favorite like that, New England, what they would do is instead of going to that 3, they'll move the juice. We all know that you lay -110 to win 100. They would move it to 115 or -120 or -125 to try to slow down the New England money and get some money on the Rams without moving the number and open themselves up for exposure, because we know that 3 is the most common number that a game will land on. But South Point will never move the juice, never ever. They are a sports book that if they have too much action on one side, rather than moving the juice, they go old school, they move the line. And they did move the line to 3, and as soon as they did, you saw everybody that was waiting for the 3 come running to get that 3, and as you said, it only lasted like 17 minutes, and it was gone. Will it get back there again? I believe it will at South Point, but when it does, it'll be the exact same result. It'll be another onslaught of sharp money jumping on the +3. And, Joe, you got to realize, too, that the average Joes, the tourists that are going to come, this is one of the biggest weekends, Super Bowl weekend in Vegas. You've got New Year's, you've got March Madness, and Super Bowl. These are big events. There'll be so much public money, but that public money won't hit town till Friday night of the Super Bowl, and then they'll be doing their money and wagering on Tom Brady and the Belichick as well.
It's funny you bring that up, because I often wondered this. Marco D'Angelo, Wagertalk.com, joining us. Marco, what happens regionally now? We've got sports books popping up all over the place. By September, by next football season, we should have about 15 states, as I count, that has legalized sports book and wagering. But I got to believe the Delawares, the Pennsylvanias, the Jerseys heavy regional New England Patriots money coming in there. How does the regionalism affect the lines overall? Will it matter what's going on over there to Vegas or vice versa?
Well, the situation, until we get any of these companies that are able to merge their pools, like a William Hill, or an MGM Properties, where they have all of the money commingled, it won't make a difference because it's all going into the same pot. But when you do have it split up regionally like this, we are going to see some bias, and this will be the first time that we really get a test of it in the Super Bowl to see if we end up with a 3 or a 3.5. I mean, it would be unheard of to have a game in Vegas around town where one book would be at 2.5 and the other book would be at 3.5 on a big game like this, because they would be open for that game landing on 3. Do you remember the Super Bowl way back when? I think it was the Cowboys and my Steelers that they called that Black Sunday, where the line had opened up, I believe, at 3.5 and went to 4 and then went to 4.5 and fell on the just worst number that it could for the books and landed on 4, where you had all of the people that took the favorite at 3.5 win and all the people that took the dog at 4.5 win. You never want to have that exposure around a 3 or a 7 in Vegas, and they just wouldn't open themselves up to that. But being regionally, it'll open up betting groups. And what you would end up having is you would have people on the East Coast pounding Rams plus the 3 or 3.5, and then you'd have the people out here betting New England at the true number of 2.5. That's something they don't want to see happen. The government doesn't want that, because that's definitely the Wire Act, and that when you've got betting pools in different states. But how are they going to monitor that? You got people out here and you got people back there. They're doing it legally.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, and you're going to have this not just this year, but certainly years to come. This is going to continue to be an issue where you've got these regional teams here. You got regional books, regional teams. It's going to be very interesting to see how they navigate through that. Marco D'Angelo, Wagertalk.com, joining us. And at Wagertalk coming up, a lot of the sharps, a lot of the people that I have talked to here, Marco, they're not thrilled with the spread bet. As a matter of fact, a lot of guys I know, probably unless it gets to some crazy number, the money is being made in props. At least that's what I keep being told. At the sharps, there's much more value. There's a bigger edge in finding the right prop at the right price. So at Wagertalk, for instance, the roster that you guys have, including yourself over there, will there be a lot of time and ability for people to be able to go there and get their prop bets?
Oh yes, we'll have a lot of selections on the props. We're doing Monday in studio, Joe. We normally tape our videos on Wednesdays, but this week we're doing a big Super Bowl show. We're going to have 3 hours. We're going to be in studio doing videos. We're having bookmakers come in from some of the various casinos. We got some other, all of our roster will be there, and then we have some invited guests coming in, and they're going to give us some of their favorite props, talk about the game. So we're going to have just a complete onslaught of Super Bowl coverage. But last night here in Vegas, big night, the SuperBook at the Westgate, and if you recognize that name, that is the sports book that has the big NFL contest every year, and first place for that this year was well over $1 million. They are the book that brings out all of the props. They have it every year. They bring it out on Thursday night, and if you've never been to Vegas to see this scene, this sports book is enormous. They have people standing in line waiting for 7 p.m. for them to start populating the betting board with the props. And you have to read them off the board. They don't have them on printouts yet. They don't have them on the app. You can just read them off the board. You get in line. You're only allowed to bet 2 props, and they have a maximum on what you can bet the first night. And then you bet your 2, you get out of line, and you get back in line, and then you can bet 2 more, and you can do that all night. They do that because they don't want one guy just hammering, 15 props, that he sees maybe they made a mistake on. So they give everybody a chance to take a shot at the board, and then you'll see where these things move. And it's good to see those openers and move, because you get some of the sharp people that have jumped in there and seen where they've made mistakes. Let me tell you, the average Joe bettor is not standing in line waiting to bet $20 on a prop on Thursday night the week before the Super Bowl. These are sharp professional bettors that have already studied some of the props and are hitting them right away and getting their money down and getting right back in line and getting more. Now, today they will release the full prop sheet on printout so people can look at it and study it that way, and it'll be available on their app as well.
Oh, see, so that's so you do find that a lot of the sharps, though, the money to them and the edge to them is in the prop bets, not necessarily, even especially in this case, not necessarily the spread or the over totals here.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of it. There's a term, advantage players, Joe, where they're just trying to get the best of it. They will come in on Thursday night when they get these numbers, and they will turn around and grab a bunch of the overs on the props. Now, that goes against everything that people tell you, that the overs are the bad bets. Okay, but listen to me. They'll do the popular ones, Brady ones, because nobody wants to root for no scoring.
Right.
They know they grab that first number for the over, and then it's going to drive it up some. And then the public, who's going to come in, as I said, a week from now on the weekend, Friday and Saturday and Sunday morning of the Super Bowl, and betting their stuff, those guys are all going to be pounding overs.
Wow.
Overs on all the props. Brady completions, Brady yardage, all that stuff. Those guys that bet the over early at the first number, guess what they're going to be coming back and doing an hour before game time? They're going to be betting the under and have a free middle there.
Yep.
And that's how advantage players, make money.
They're taking advantage of what they know the public consistently does. And by the way, we're not talking about a year or two worth of data here. This is consistently, we see what the public is doing. We know what their tendencies are. And that's these advantage players, they pounce on the ability to be able to take exactly that, advantage of what they know the public is going to do.
Absolutely. Think about it. You set 100 people down in a room, and you ask them if they want to bet over or under on a total. You're gonna have the majority of them say over, and the reason being is the average bettor's mind thinks that when I bet an over, I'm never out of the bet. I'm live until the game's over. Well, no, you're not, because they think about, if I bet an under and it's a high-scoring game, my bet could be dead in the third quarter. You're right. Your bet could be dead in the third quarter. But when you bet a under, you've never lost the ticket until it actually goes over. Yeah. When you bet an over, you're never winning the entire game until you get to that number.
Yep. And
you sometimes never get to that number. So people want scoring. They feel more comfortable with scoring. And let's face it, over the last few years, because of the rule changes, we have seen more scoring, and it's taken the books longer to adjust to this new market in the way they were scoring. I mean, we remember the Rams-Chiefs Monday night game. That game was insane. It was the highest total that we had seen posted on a game, and I spent that night in a bar watching the game, which is usually what usually happens. There might be a plate of wings involved as well.
Right.
And I had to set my wings down because, you can't text and tweet when you got wing sauce on your fingers. And I kept updating what the in-game over-under was, because it kept going up and up and up all through that game, where it actually peaked at 103.5 in that Rams Chiefs game. And people on Twitter were just going crazy because you had never seen anything like that. And I just, was doing it. It was such an enjoyable game.
It's 103. Think of that. 103 is what that went up to. It's absolutely crazy, but you're right. People, they want scoring, and the more of it, the better off it's going to be. And if you're in a position to be able to take advantage of that, that's pretty much what you got guys doing right now in Vegas here, as we haven't really even seen the bulk of the public money coming in yet. I think there'll be a bigger push leading up to it. Because, like you said, there's not a lot of $20 guys that are standing in line there for a few hours waiting for the prop windows to open.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
it's a great scene to see. I mean, you got to come to Vegas sometime Super Bowl week. It is quite a collection of people of different diverse backgrounds. Let me say that.
That's good people watching. That's what I'm talking about. Marco D'Angelo, WagerTalk.com, joining us. Our good friends over at WagerTalk.com. There is nothing but, as you can hear from Marco, some of the best free information. Knowledge is power. We talk about it on the show all the time. You're not going to get any better free information anywhere than WagerTalk.com. So make sure that you guys are tailing them. Make sure you're tailing Marco as well, at Marco in Vegas. This man is eating wings and he is tweeting at the same time, people, okay? This guy is dedicated to making sure you have the latest information that you need to make smart sports investing decisions. He's also a lifelong horse guy, and we have one of the biggest races, certainly one of the most expensive races outside of the big three coming up, the Pegasus World Cup. It is in Gulfstream, right in my backyard. And as you take a look at this field, and for those of you that don't know, this has not been around forever, Marco. This is only about 3 years old, I believe. And how would you classify this? Is it just a bunch of rich horse owners getting together to puff out their chests and say, look at my horse? Or is there something more to what this Pegasus World Cup has come to be?
Well, it is a little bit of the pumping of the chest because, let's face it, the richest horse race had actually been not here in, people would say, oh, the Kentucky Derby or whatever. Actually is not. The richest horse race was over in Dubai, the Dubai World Cup. And, you got sheiks over there, they got their harems and everything else, and they like their horses. And they put up some big money for that race. So the Stonrich Group, at Gulfstream and everything, they got this thing together and put this together, and it's the richest horse race here in America, $9 million purse. The winning horse, I believe, is going to take I think it's $4 million of the $9 million, and then it's broken down the rest of the way. And a $4 million payday is a pretty nice 2 minutes of work, let me tell you. Okay, and these are the best horses in the country right now. And there's horse that's the aged horse of the year in Accelerate. There's the horse that's really come on the scene in the last 6 months. City of Light has been just amazing. And both of those two horses, this is going to be their swan song racing in this race. This is their final race. They're heading to what I want to be is in the next life. I want to be a champion stud racehorse. I want you to put me out to pasture. I want people to pay hundreds of $1,000s for me to service their mares. That's a good gig.
That is the best gig. As a matter of fact, let me know when you get that job. Maybe you can put in a word for me, Marco. It is a crazy field of 12. And those that may not know a little bit about horse racing, too, usually that you're used to hearing, well, it's a 2-year-old race. It's a 3-year-old race. This is also a race where they're all over the board. They're not, you've got a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, you got 3. You got a little bit of everything in this race. So it's usually you don't get that. You'll have it, everything is about class. You'll get 3-year-olds together, but not here, Marco. We've got ourselves a 12-horse field, and they are from all walks of life.
Oh, absolutely. There's a horse in this race that's undefeated, 14 of 14. Doesn't have a chance in this race. He was racing in Mexico, much softer competition. 14 for 14, he's made $326,000. Okay, there's nothing shabby about that. But if you won 14 races in the United States and you were racing in Grade 1 races, you would have millions of dollars on your card, and you probably already would have been lined up for the stud barn with that record. And but he's going to take his shot here. Give the owners, credit. They wanted to take the shot, and they're in here. And there's the old saying, you can't win if you're not in, so, take the shot, but he will not be one of the horses I'll be using. As we talked about, the big horse in the race is Accelerate. This is a horse that's done, absolutely nothing wrong. He's had 7 starts this year. He's won 6 of the 7 starts. The one race that he lost by a neck, and that was to City of Light, the other horse that I talked about. And those are the 2 horses that are going to get all of the money, and they should. But, when we're betting horse racing, the thing that you're looking at is you want to make money, and you're not going to make a lot of money with the favorites. Generally speaking, though, in the bigger races, there's bigger betting pools because more people are going to be involved. The Kentucky Derby is the best betting investment you can make because there's so much dead money in the Kentucky Derby. And let me explain to the casual fan that doesn't know what I'm talking about. When you're sports betting, you're betting you against the house. They set a number. You either take the favorite or the dog, and you're laying 110 to 100. When you're betting horses, you're not betting against the track or the sports book. They don't care who wins because the racetrack makes the same amount of money whether it's a long shot that comes in or the favorite comes in. All they're doing is collecting everybody that is betting's money, taking a predetermined percentage out of that pool, and then the rest of the money is divided by the players who have the winning tickets. So when you have casual people betting the Derby that never bet horses before, they're basically throwing their money away because they don't know what they're doing, and that inflates the betting pool, which for somebody like myself that's sharper and understands, I will invest more money in the Kentucky Derby because there's more money in there to be won. 2 years ago in the Kentucky Derby, and I gave this out to my customers. We sold these picks for $25, and I gave them a betting sheet with exactly what I was doing. We invested $390 that day.
Damn.
We brought back in that one race $9,000.
There you go. Yep, there you go. And on a normal day, you would not have been able to get that kind of return, but because of the inflated prices, that's where, same thing with the Breeders' Cup. When you get these casual folks that come in there and they start they really start to increase the pools, and it's guys like Marco and the other horse sharps that can come in there, and you can have a field day during those events.
Absolutely, because even in those events, if you do get the favorites come in, on a normal day at Gulfstream, if you went there on a Wednesday afternoon and you bet two favorites in the fifth race and they run 1-2, your exacta might bring back $10 or $11.
Right.
But on that Kentucky Derby day, the two favorites run 1-2. That exacta is going to come back $25 or $30 just because of how big the pool is. Because people are betting, they're betting colors, they're betting horses' names, they're betting their birthdays. It's an event. They just want to be there. They want to have a mint julep in their hand and bet the horses and have a fancy hat on.
That's exactly what it is. It's an event. It's an occasion. It's a party, but it's also payday for a lot of the sharps like Marco D'Angelo joining us, Wagertalk.com. It is the Pegasus World Cup. It is at Gulfstream Park. And as we look into this race here, this is all about, if you're looking at a race from a, let's say, speed standpoint, right? If it's about pace, well, you got 12 horses here, and of the 12, 6 can set the pace rather quickly. You got a horse like Gunnevera who finished third at the Breeders' Cup, came in 30-1, made a lot of people like yourself an awful lot of money in their exotics. I don't know if it's far enough for somebody like Gunnevera, if this is long enough and give him a shot, considering the pace is probably going to be rather quick. But when you see this, how are you anticipating this out of the gate to the finish line? Are you expecting it to be the speed just really taking over this race, or do you think that we might actually get a little bit slower pace?
Well, I think because of the post-position draw of this race, and that's when you break a race down, you've got to look and see where everybody's located at. City of Light out of the post-position 3, that's going to be great for him. This is one of the horses that's going to want to have the lead or be sitting right there second off of the lead. Now, the horse that definitely wants the lead drew the outside post position, and that's Pattern Recognition. This is a horse that guns out of there and wants to control the pace. he's going to have to use himself a little bit out of the post 12 to get to the lead before they get into that first turn. And this is a two-turn race, and that's something that, you know, a lot of people will talk about and point out, well, this horse doesn't do well on two turns. This one seems to excel on two turns. You know, races are run depending on the track configuration and the distance of the race, whether or not you have to go through two turns or not, and this race will be two turns. So he's got to get to the lead and get himself to the rail wherever he wants to be. He's going to use a little bit of his horse to get there. Now, the question is, how much of his horse does he use to get there? And then once he gets there, is he going to be able to back the horse off and get him to calm down and rate so he doesn't use them all up before they hit that final stretch drive? City of Light will be the other horse that will be pressing the lead, and as you said, there are, you know, 4 or 5 other horses that like to be forward place. The 6 horse is another horse that likes to be out there, and when you've got the outside post position, as pattern recognition does, you're at the mercy of everybody inside of you of what their game plan is. So everybody that's inside of him that decides they want to go forward too, that's more work that you're going to have to do to get there. Now, Gunnevera, very astutely, he has a great closing kick, as you pointed out, but this is a horse that has absolutely zero interest in the race for the first half mile of the race.
Yep.
You need to send out search crews to find where he's at in the race. You will not see him on your picture if you're watching on TV, but he'll come flying late. You said, is the distance enough? People have the, you know, they talk about the Belmont, you know, because that's the mile-and-a-half race, and say, okay, that's great for the closers because of the added distance. Well, too often when you've got a longer race, they go slower fractions in the middle, and then you can't make up the ground because no matter how much of a closer you are, you can still only go so fast. And you can pick up every 5 lengths is a second, you know, and you've got to be in a position where you're close enough to make up your ground, but if the horses in front of you went slow fractions, they're not going to be coming back to you as rapidly as you're coming to them, as opposed if they went very fast at the beginning of the race, they're starting to slow down their third quarter time, their fourth, you know, 3 quarters and that. So it's a situation of pace of how it goes. So Gunnevera can reach at a mile and an eighth. He would need a very hot pace to do so. There's another closer in the race that I like, and this is going to be my price horse. And I'm going to look to number 10, Audible. And what I like about him, as opposed to Gunnevera, is, and don't get me wrong, Gunnevera you want to use on the bottom end of your exotics, you know, the bottom end of the exactas and the tries, because he still could pick up a piece of it. But Audible has a great closing kick, but he won't be coming from out of the clouds. He's what we call a mid-pack stalker, and he'll be in that first group that can make that run at the front runners. And if they got that honest, fast pace at the front, I think he's going to be flying. And there's a couple things I like about this horse. If you look at horses here, and you talked about the different ages and everything, number 1, Bravazzo. This is a horse that's been ultra consistent, but he is a 4-year-old, okay, just turned 4. In horse racing, every horse's technical birthday is January 1st.
Right.
So this is a horse that just came off the Triple Crown Trail, raced the, you know, the Breeders' Cup, everything else. He didn't miss a dance all season. 16 starts for a horse at 2 and 3 is a lot of starts. And he's going right into the 4-year-old season. I just think it's too much for Bravazzo.
Yep.
He's consistent, but he is what he is right now. I don't see him making that leap.
No. Well, he's also got a pretty good trainer, too, in Dwayne Lucas, and it's really going to be up to, I think, to the jockey. He's got to figure out rather quickly. He does have some tactical speed, that this being Bravazzo. He's got some tactical speed. The question is, when does he kick it in, and when does he use it? And, you know, that, unfortunately, is not going to be dictated by him.
No, but it's also going to be, he's going to have to use some of it having the rail, because he doesn't want the avalanche of all of those front runners coming down and pinching him off. So he's going to want to get out of the gate somewhat to get a position where he's not coming through the entire field later in the race. But Audible, the difference between Bravazzo and Audible, they're both 4-year-olds. Audible only has 8 lifetime starts. We still have not seen his ceiling. And he had a major break after the Kentucky Derby to November. So he went from May to November, where they freshened his horse up, got him ready, come back, win his first race back in a cheap race, but it was a tightener. Then in the Harlan Handy Stakes, there was he finished second that day, and a lot of people were disappointed in that, and that's why they're jumping ship on Audible. They're saying that he should have went by that horse in that race.
That was a terrible track, though. That was slop. It was awful there last month.
Absolutely, and that's the point I'm going to point out. 2 big things out of that. Me as a horse owner, I would not have given 2 craps about that race and that purse when my next race on the docket was a $9 million purse. That was simply a prep race. We wanted to get work into him, wanted him to be charging at the end of the race, and move on to the next race. You don't want to race his guts out in that race and then have nothing left for the next race. You want gas left in the tank. Then when race day and it turned up sloppy, as bad as that track was, if it was an overnight race and he didn't have this race coming up, me as an owner, I would have scratched my horse. I wouldn't have raced over that track condition.
Ooh.
Okay? But you needed to get work into that horse. So I think they just did what they needed to get enough out of that race to have him pointing forward to this race, and I'm going with him. Now, they also changed jocks because Castellano is obviously on City of Light.
Right.
And he's been, that's the better horse on paper. Flavor and Pratt, if you don't follow West Coast racing, this guy is phenomenal. And when I see him, the first year that he came to the Santa Anita Del Mar meet, I was crushing. I did not leave him off my ticket in any race because he was jumping on horses and waking them up.
Yep.
He had a fantastic first year there. Then he started getting a lot more live mounts, and he's a great jockey. I have no problem with him jumping on this horse. And the part that you cannot dismiss is even though that last race was on the slop, it was on Gulfstream Park surface, he got another race over the track, and what did he do last year over this track? Well, he won the Florida Derby.
Yep.
So this horse likes this course. I think he's primed and ready for a monster effort. Morning line 10-1. He's all over my exotics, and what I'm going to end up doing is I'm not throwing City of Light out and Accelerate, but I'm going to use 3 horses on top in my try. I do what I call a try key will, and I will put those 3 horses, and those 3 horses obviously are the 3, 5, and 10. And then some of the horses that I'm going to be using underneath in the race, another long shot, look at number 2, Something Awesome. This is a horse that loves this distance. He's 2 for 2 at a mile and an eighth. You've got Edgar Prado on. This is a guy that can be patient. He's another one that's going to be closing. He'll be one of those ones that's in, the second half of the horses in the race, but he has that big closing kick. He's a veteran horse. He's the oldest horse in the race at 8, 26 lifetime races. He's made over $1 million. He's got 18 out of 26 on the board in his career, and he's in good form right now. He's won 2 wins and a second in his last 4 starts. He had 1 bad race. Something happened in that race because after that race, they gave him a break for 5 months. And now he's back, come back with a nice tightener in his first start. I would have loved to have 2 tighteners because if you talk to any horse trainer, they will tell you that when a horse is coming back, The third race back is the best race in the pattern. The second one's good. The third one's better.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's where we are on Audible.
Now, what about the runner-up, the Cigar Mile runner-up, True Timber? It's going to be a big number, but there is some chatter around there that he might also be somebody you want to use in the exotics because of the number. It is a jump in class and a little bit of a jump in distance to what he's been running lately, but somebody also you can't ignore coming out of the number 7 spot there.
Well, that's the thing. When you're in a race of this kind of purse, you're going to have the best horses, and yes, he's a horse there. Given his post position 7, and given the fact that he's one of the horses that likes to be near the pace and the added distance, I'm just worried that he's going to get caught up in fractions that he doesn't want to be in. And that he's not going to have the closing kick to hold off some of these better horses that have gone the distance and have the powerful closing kick that'll be able to pick him up late. If you use him, I would be using him on just the bottom end of the trifecta, finishing third.
Listen, sometimes you have to decide as a horse player, and you know this, Marco, and for the viewers and listeners who are joining us here, Marco D'Angelo, Wagertalk.com. We are talking about the Pegasus getting ready to go off Gulfstream Park. 12 horses, 12 of the best from around the world, a lot of money at stake, and some of these are names that you have probably heard of, even if you don't follow horses. A lot of these names you've probably heard of because they've been in the news and they've been winning for a lot recently. But sometimes the best horse carrying all the chalk, there's nothing you can do. I mean, sometimes they can't be beaten. So no matter what, I mean, we try to play it in our heads, and we're always looking for these big numbers. But the truth is that, the best horse with all the chalk sometimes is just that. And maybe that's what Accelerate is here, that we're waiting for him to fall off, but there's a good shot he may not, and just take this thing in rather easy fashion.
Absolutely. And another factor that you got to consider when you look at it, in this race, this time, all of the horses, when you're in a big race like this, they carry the same weight. They're all going to be carrying 124 pounds. In some of these other races, they handicap it. And the race that, like, for example, City of Light is the only horse to beat Accelerate this year. He had a three-pound weight allowance. He was carrying 3 pounds less than Accelerate was during that race. Now this time he's got to carry the same weight, and he's carrying, the big number, 124. The most they ever carry is 126, these horses, and that's like, the big races, the Breeders' Cup, the Triple Crown races and such. But there's no handicap in those races. Everybody, you got to go out there and do it on your own. So that's another thing to look at some of these horses, like the horse that you mentioned with True Timber. When they've had their success, they weren't, carrying the full weight.
Yeah. And, well, tell me this. Maybe you can help us understand as you look. You got 12-horse field here. But why, if you're why is Imperative in here? It's a 9-year-old making his 45th career start. It's a huge number, 35 to 1 here. It's the longest shot on the board. But why are you putting this horse in this race? You're an owner here, Marco, so tell me, what is the benefit of entering Imperative in this race?
For some owners, and this is, when you're an owner, you always dream about racing in the biggest races. And some owners, pure and simple, have more money than maybe they have smarts. Okay, they want to feel all warm and fuzzy and have the experience of being at Gulfstream Park on Pegasus Day. Because let's face it, the track caters to the owners. You're in the private boxes. The parties the night before, the big spreads the day of the race. You're there eating, drinking. You're a celebrity. You're an owner of a horse in the Pegasus. It's the same way in the Derby. If they didn't limit the entries of the Derby to 20, you would have 30 horses wanting to be in there, because there's owners that would put the money up just to get their horse in the race. You just got to be smart sometimes, and in some instances, the track will, maybe ask an owner, and I don't know if that's the case in this one because they want a certain number of betting entries. I know, like in my hometown track, we were planning sometime to give, maybe my horse a week off, and we weren't going to race that week, and the race wasn't filling. They only had 5 or 6 horses, and they needed another horse, and the racing secretary will call up and ask you to put a horse in there. But in a race like this big, more often than not, it's the owner that wants the experience.
Well, and that's where when we started this, the whole ego thing comes into play. But we've got, it is now in its 3rd year of existing. It is no doubt, it is one hell of a day. It's in Gulfstream, South Florida. The stars will come out for this. I think we had Post Malone here last year. It is a great race, and if you are a horse fan, or even not a horse fan, it's a pretty exciting time of year because it also means just around the corner, it won't be too long before we are talking about mint juleps. So, Marco, for those that might be just joining us, give us what you're playing here for the Pegasus World Cup. Give us your card.
All right, I'm going to give you my order of how I like this race. I'm swinging for the fences with Audible, and I have Accelerate second. I have City of Light third, and then the next 4 horses I'm going to put on my trifecta on the bottom end. And this wager, if you want to go to the racetrack or to your casino wherever we're at and play, this is a nice way to have a shot at the trifecta, and you're going to invest $45 and you'll have a fun time. Put 3, 5, 10 in the first position. In the second position, put 2, 3, 5, 10, and then on the bottom, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12. That ticket, that's a $1 try, costs $45. You'll be able to have some fun and enjoy the race. If you want to play exactas, box 3, 5, 10. Call it a day, and if you want to bet the long shot, put some money across the board on Audible.
Love that. I'm very similar. I'm going City of Light, Accelerate, Gunnevera, Seeking the Soul. I do think City of Light might be able to get it done. Accelerate's going to be there, but I ain't giving up on Gunnevera, and I think Seeking the Soul along with Gunnevera could make things very interesting. But I think we can both agree, though, either way, this is going to be one hell of a race to watch as well there, Marco.
Oh, it is. And even if you're not a fan of horse racing, these horses, if you've ever understood the odds of from the time a horse foals to you get him to the racetrack, and then just to the racetrack, not become a great horse, just get to the racetrack, the odds are stacked so far against you, and then to have a horse of these caliber that they have here, they're just true athletes. And you're watching a horse compete for $9 million.
Yeah, exactly.
We love that. Yep. Okay, and I get chills when they're putting them in the gate. It doesn't matter. These big races, I'm sitting there. I've had some big races in my day. Nothing like this, but you can't describe the feeling as a horse owner watching your horse. They put them in the gate, or watch your horse come flying down the stretch, and then getting to go to the winner's circle. It's a high that you can't experience with any drug, let me tell you.
Beautiful animals, great athletes, any which way you cut it, and there's nothing like a day at the races. There's also nothing like the information and the quality that you're going to get over at Wagertalk.com, and it starts with Marco D'Angelo at the top. You guys know Ralph, Kelly Stewart, hell, even the Prez at moments is, has his moments there, but it's nothing but the best for you guys, and they deliver time and time again. Wagertalk.com. Get ready for the big game. They'll have you already. Prop bets, picks, sides, everything. It's kind of one-stop shop for you. Make sure that you guys head over to Wagertalk.com. Make sure you are tailing Marco at Marco in Vegas, and I can't thank you enough, man, for taking the time, talking some horses here. I think it's going to be a hell of a season. I hope we can do this again leading up to the Kentucky Derby, my friend.
Absolutely. Anytime you need it, my friend, we're there. And we got the open invitation for you to come to Vegas. You come out here, we'll take care of you. I come down to Gulfstream, you show me around.
You got it. Not a problem. Marco D'Angelo, Wagertalk.com. Make sure that you guys get there today.